Hello, everyone. Hello. Sorry, starting a couple minutes late. I had to figure out an issue with LinkedIn. Apparently, my description was too long and it wouldn't post. So I had to quickly make an edit, but we are now live. So hello to everybody who's watching on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on YouTube, on Twitter, and on Instagram. Got to have a separate camera for the Instagram folks. So hello to everybody on Instagram. So we'll give it maybe just one more second here. So those of you who are joining today, we're going to be looking specifically at imposter syndrome and what leaders can do to overcome imposter syndrome. And believe it or not, this is something that is very, very common for a lot of leaders out there around the world. And I think it's a very, very important topic for all of us to talk about and address. I want this to be interactive. So regardless of the channel that you are watching on, I have a couple screens here that I can look at. Feel free to leave a comment, interact with me, share your tips. I want these to feel much less like presentations and more like dialogues, kind of like we're just sitting, having a chat at a coffee shop, just kind of hanging out and sharing some ideas. So you can jump in, say hi, let me know where you guys are from. Have you ever faced imposter syndrome? Do you have any tips or strategies on how you have personally overcome imposter syndrome? Something that maybe one of the other viewers or listeners might be able to learn from. If so, share your tips below. Let's make this something that we can all learn from, because I think it's an important topic and something that a lot of us struggle with. So before we get started, this is part of a new series that I'm testing out for a few weeks, where every Wednesday I go live at 9 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to look at a new leadership topic. The one that I did last week was looking at how leaders can keep up with all the changes that we're seeing in the world of leadership. And today I'm going to be looking at specifically this concept of imposter syndrome. And I also want to mention, if you want to get notified when I go live, and if you also want to get access to a PDF that I put together, it's called the Leadership Digest. And it gives you a summary of the 9 skills and mindsets that 140 of the world's top CEOs say are most crucial for leadership. You can go to theleadershipdigest.com. That's theleadershipdigest.com. And you will be able to access that PDF there. I will also put it up here on the screen for those who are curious. And then, so that's the URL, theleadershipdigest.com. It's a great way to stay connected with me via the email newsletter. And you'll also get a cool PDF, and you'll see some really interesting quotes from some of the CEOs that I interviewed for my book. So hello, I see we have a couple comments coming in. United Arab Emirates, hello. I've only been there a couple times. It's a beautiful, beautiful part of the world. Those of you who are watching, let me know, where are you watching from? What part of the world are you in today? Oh, I see you. Yes, you are correct. So I did get a comment here. Women suffer from this even more than men. You know, I very much agree with that. And my wife speaks to this as well. Some of you know my wife, Blake, and my better half. And she's certainly talked about this as well. And we have a podcast together where we've talked about this too. So hello, Philadelphia. Very nice. I like Philly. I have a feeling I know who that is. India. Hello from India. I've been to India once in my life, and it was a very interesting experience. I like India. Okay, so we're going to jump right in. It looks like a couple people are joining in. We have a pretty good group on all the different social channels out there. So I'm going to jump right into the content that I had for everyone today. Hello from South Africa. Never been there yet. I hope one day I will get a chance to go there. St. Louis, Missouri. It is, fun fact, St. Louis is one of the chess capitals of the world. So if you haven't been to the St. Louis Chess Club yet, Chris, you should definitely go. North Carolina, hello. Paris. All right, I'm a little jealous. The Philippines, hello. Yes, it is pretty late in the Philippines, but thank you so much for joining me. Okay, so talking about imposter syndrome, I think first it's important for us to, Brazil, hello. So first thing I want to do is look at what exactly is imposter syndrome. Imposter syndrome is basically this feeling that you get like you're a fraud, like you don't belong, you're not good enough, you're not smart enough. It's a lot of this self-doubt that you get. I remember I experienced this very, very early on in my career when I first started speaking. This was around 15 years ago. And I mean, I very much felt imposter syndrome the first time I got on a stage, and I was wearing this suit that was too big, like the cuffs were going all the way down, covering my hand. The jacket was too big. I felt like I was in some sort of a clown suit. And I remember when I got on stage, and I was probably in my, I don't know, early mid 20s. And it's a group of business leaders. I think it was like 200 of them. And the first things that are going through my mind is, why would these people want to hear from me? Why should I even be on this stage? Like, I didn't feel very comfortable in my own skin. I had a lot of doubt. So I very much experienced that imposter syndrome. I had the same thing when I wrote my first book, when I started sharing content online. This is something that a lot of people experience. And believe it or not, I think the research shows that around 70% of people will experience imposter syndrome at some point in their lives. Many people will actually experience it more than one time. So it's a very, very common thing. And it's something that if you haven't experienced yet, you probably will. And guess what? So have a lot of the people around you, including your leaders. And this is especially prevalent for leaders because leaders have a large amount of pressure that falls on them. Because the stereotype that we always have of leaders is that they need to have all the answers, that they always need to know the best course of action, that leaders know everything that should be done, that leaders can overcome any challenges. We have this like very high regard and esteem of leaders, that they are perfect. And that's kind of the stereotype of leaders. And because of that, as a leader, you might feel a lot of pressure to always feel like you have to be perfect and like you have to know everything. But interestingly enough, this isn't something that just leaders face. I mean, we all face this, but I think it is especially prevalent for leaders because of this added pressure that they have. And this is why I think what I want to share today are specific strategies that leaders can use to overcome this. But the strategies that I'm going to share with you are not exclusive for leaders. These are things that anybody can start to practice. So a couple things that I think are very important to start with for leaders. The first thing that I want you to do is take a look at who you surround yourself with. Now, it's very comfortable if you're in a leadership position to surround yourself with people who you are smarter than. You surround yourself with people where you know you're better than them. You might be more talented than them. You're more seasoned than them. You are more comfortable in an environment where you know that you can do things that nobody else around you can do. That's kind of the comfort zone. We feel more superior. We feel like we have more command and control of the situation. And this is actually how a lot of the leadership mentality has been for many years. I suppose you could even call this the traditional manager. But what I want you to do is to focus on surrounding yourself by people who are actually better than you, smarter than you, people who are more talented than you, people who are more capable than you. And this is going to tie very much into the second tip that I have for you. So the first one is to really look at, as a leader, who you surround yourself with. Because if you constantly surround yourself with people and you know that you can do things that they can't do, you're not going to learn, you're not going to grow, you're not going to develop. Nobody's going to push you to get outside of your comfort zone. And in that kind of an environment, really what you do is you create a situation where you are putting an extra amount of pressure on yourself because you are purposely surrounding yourself by people who you know are perhaps not as capable, not as talented, not as experienced as you. And you create this kind of pyramid, or you can even think of it as like a downward funnel, where you force everybody to always come to you for a solution, to always come to you for an answer, to always look to you when something goes wrong. And it might seem kind of cool at the beginning that everybody's always coming to you and saying, "Oh, Jacob, you're so wise. You're the leader. Help us figure this out." It might seem cool for a little bit, but over time, you're going to find that people are going to start to come to you with things and you're not going to have the right answers. You're not going to know the best solution. And what starts to happen is you start to make things up. you have a very hard time to just say, I don't know. And as you start to make things up, that's when you start to really feel this imposter syndrome. Like, well, I don't really know the answer. I should make something up. So first, again, the tip there is to surround yourself with people who are better, smarter, more talented than you. And this ties into the second tip that I wanted to share with you, which is around embracing a little bit more vulnerability. So part of surrounding yourself with people who are more talented than you means that when somebody comes to you with things, you need to learn to say, I don't know. And again, this is something that is very, very hard for leaders to figure out because leaders are never taught to say, I don't know. If you go to school to get an MBA or an executive MBA, there's no class on vulnerability. There's no class that teaches you on how do you say, I don't know. Everything that you learn is how do you figure out the best strategy? How do you do an analysis? Do a SWOT here. This is how you delegate. These are the different types of leadership styles. Nobody ever teaches you how do you say, I don't know, and how do you get comfortable with saying, I don't know. And I had this experience firsthand. I remember when I was speaking at an event and somebody asked me a question, and there was a couple of years of my speaking career. And again, this is like 15 years ago, where when people would ask me stuff on stage, I would try to make stuff up. Like, even if I did not know the answer, I would come up with something, whether it was right, whether it was grounded in any kind of research or stories or data, I would just say stuff. And then finally, I remember this is probably 12 years ago. So I've probably been speaking for around 2-3 years. And somebody asked me a question, and I really had no idea what the answer was. And I was standing there on stage. I was probably feeling a little bit, turning a little red because I didn't know what to say. And finally, I just said, you know what? It's a great question. I don't know the answer to that. I wish I did know the answer to that. And then instead I asked the audience, I said, hey, I don't know the answer to that. Does anybody in this room have an idea on that? Is anybody in this industry? Is anybody working in this particular field? Do you have an answer that maybe you can provide to this person? And somebody else stood up and they shared their answer, and, the problem got solved. And ever since then, I learned the importance and the value of being able to say, I don't know. And this is especially true in a leadership situation. Right? If you surround yourself by people who are more talented than you, then you've created an environment where it's okay to say, I don't know, because those around you will be able to come up with a solution. Those around you will be able to identify a new opportunity or to come up with a solution to something. So really what I want you to try to do as a leader is the next time somebody asks you something, I don't even care if you're in a meeting, if you're in a town hall, if you're a one-on-one conversation, the next time somebody asks you something that you genuinely don't know the answer to, try practicing and say, I don't know. That's a really good question. Unfortunately, I'm just not sure. What do you think? And try to turn it into more of a conversation. And again, this ties very much into the previous point of surrounding yourself with people who are more talented than you, who are smarter than you, more experienced than you, because it sort of gives them power to help come up with a solution. Just because you are in a leadership role does not mean you are necessarily the most talented or the smartest. You could be a great leader because of your ability to set a vision. You could be a leader because of your ability to communicate, to motivate, to inspire, to push people, to unlock their true potential. It doesn't necessarily mean that you are better than everybody on your team in a certain area. So I also think it's really important for you to change the definition of what leadership means. Don't assume that just because you are a leader, it means that you are the most talented person. You can be a leader because you are good at unlocking the potential of others. The analogy I always like to use is a coach. Somebody like Roger Federer has a coach. All the top basketball teams have coaches. All the individual athletes, they all have coaches. Serena Williams has a coach. Golfers have coaches. It doesn't mean that these coaches are better than the players, but what these coaches do, what these leaders do, is they help unlock the potential of these players. They help unlock the potential of the teams. So understand that as a leader, that is really your core responsibility, is to unlock the potential of others. So I'm going to stop there for a second because I see a couple questions coming in. how do you suggest supporting others to get from having all the answers to the willingness to own I don't know? So it sounds like the question here is perhaps, and let me throw this question up on here so other people can see it. So Craig, it sounds like the question here is those around you are very frequently trying to come up with the answers and they refuse to say I don't know. I think the best way to start there is to lead by example. So be in a situation where that person or that team hears you say, I don't know. And then they will feel a little bit more comfortable saying, I don't know themselves. So the behavior that you want other people to exhibit, start exhibiting it yourself. And then that slowly starts to create the culture where it is acceptable to say, I don't know. So hopefully that answers your question, Craig. If not, let me know and I'm happy to clarify it. So the next point that I want to get to is something that Carol Dweck, she wrote a great book called Mindset. And she says that really what you need to do is focus on what you are learning instead of on what you are doing. And I'm going to repeat that. Focus on what you are learning instead of on what you are doing. What you are doing is when you focus on a specific task and you might say, oh, I failed that task, or I didn't complete that project, or I didn't close that proposal, or, whatever it might be, but you very much focus on the task. Instead, I think it's important to pay attention to what you are learning. And I frequently like to say this, that failure is a state of mind. Failure is a state of mind. And so if you focus on what you are learning from everything, then you won't view these things that you don't do well as failures. You will look at them as things that you've learned and that you can apply to other situations and scenarios. So for example, I don't know, maybe a big proposal or a project didn't close. And it's very easy to say, oh, you know what? I failed. I as a leader was supposed to close this deal and I wasn't able to do it. I shouldn't be here. I don't belong here. I'm going to get fired. It's very easy to kind of go into that trap. But instead, what you could say is, look, this project didn't close. What did I learn as a result of this? Why didn't this close? What mistakes were made that I can then apply to another situation or another similar circumstance that might happen in the future? This is part of what having a growth mindset is all about. It's when you get these obstacles and these challenges that come your way, you don't view them as these permanent walls that you can't get through. You view them as things that you have to overcome. And I can share, another personal example. I have lots of these types of guinea pig examples from myself. I remember a few years ago, I was asked to speak at a conference. And this was a regional conference. I spoke at for this company before, and I got these wonderful endorsements from the CEO and other people who work there. And this was like a regional, another country that wanted me to do a similar talk. And they saw these wonderful endorsements that I had, and they said, oh, you know what? We'd love to have you talk. Let's jump on the phone call and chat with our CEO. And so we get on the phone call, and I'm not always necessarily a phone person. And so we get on the phone call, and I guess I sounded a little bit tired, a little bit less energetic than I usually am. And so we did the phone call, and then afterwards I find out that I didn't get hired for the talk. And it would have been very easy for me to sit there and go like, oh my God, I'm terrible. Like I'm a horrific speaker. I don't know how to close deals. Why didn't this happen? And instead, I realized that what I learned from this situation is that you still need to be, at least me, I still need to be humble and treat every inquiry that I get as a new inquiry, even if it's from the same company. I need to be on every phone call with a positive attitude, with the same energy that I typically bring into everything else that I do. And I can't let my game slip and assume that I'm going to close a deal just because I did it for that same company in another region. And so instead of focusing on the act, the failure itself of not being able to get this speaking gig, which I thought 120% I was going to get, I was able to look at what I learned from that. And again, that was having that the humility of knowing that I still need to try hard, and I'm never going to be a shoe-in for anything. So that's what I learned from that. I think that's part what having a growth mindset is all about. So as a leader, I think this is also very, very important and relevant for you, is pay attention to what you learn, not just paying attention to the fact that something didn't go your way. The next one is a really, really important one, and it is self-talk. Self-talk. How do you talk to yourself? Because how you talk to yourself is going to matter more than anything. It's going to matter more than how anybody else talks to you. And again, giving you sort of a personal example, I spend a lot of time doing chess puzzles. I love chess. I study chess. I take lessons with a grandmaster. I'm really, really obsessed with chess. And there have been plenty of times where I'm doing a chess puzzle, where I'll be playing a game online against somebody. My wife is sitting in the other room, and I'll be playing the game, and I make a mistake, and I start cursing. Oh, Jacob, you're such an effing idiot. Blah blah blah. And my wife hears me from the other room, and she says, "Don't talk to my husband like that." And or when I play racquetball, or I play any competitive sport, and I make a mistake, my default internally is always like, "Oh my God, like how could you do that? You're such an idiot. How could you miss that shot? How could that's my default, right? I tend to get very negative. And I have had to learn over time to switch that into the positive. And instead of saying, "Oh, how could you do that?" say, "It's okay, regroup. Next time, stand a little bit to the left." Or, next time when you're solving a chess puzzle, take an extra 10 seconds. So how you talk to yourself is crucial, which means that as a leader, if you make a mistake or something doesn't go your way, it's very easy to default to the negative. "Oh, I should have said this. Why didn't I say that? I could have done this." Instead, I want you to default to more of the positive and say, "You know what? It's okay. I didn't get it right this time, but I have another meeting next week, and I'm going to spend the extra time and the extra effort, and I'm really going to nail it next time." Or again, going back to the idea of what did I learn from this and how can I apply it to other scenarios? And if you find that you start to default into the negative self-talk, what I want you to do is every negative thought that you get, I want you to replace it with 3 to 5 positive thoughts. So if you get a negative thought that says, "Why did I do that? How could I say that?" Immediately think of 3 positive things, or 5 positive things if you can. "Well, how could I say that? That was such a big mistake. But I'm really glad I put this meeting together to begin with. I'm really glad that I was able to reach out and do this. I'm really glad that I was able to speak up and share my ideas in front of people." So default to the positive as soon as you see any of that negative stuff pop into your mind. That's going to be very, very important. Pay attention to the inner voice that you have. Couple other just bonus ones, which I think are relevant. One is repetition. One of the ways that you can overcome imposter syndrome is by doing something over and over and over and over again. So in my case, when I felt I had this imposter syndrome from speaking, one of the things that I did is I spoke more and more and more and more and more. And over time, you start to feel more comfortable in your skin because you're doing this a lot. So as a leader, maybe you feel uncomfortable having an all hands meeting. Maybe you feel uncomfortable making a big decision. Maybe you feel uncomfortable doing one-on-one interviews with people or having difficult conversations. The more you start to do those things, the more comfortable you are going to get doing them. So repetition and doing something over and over and over again is a really, really important thing that you as a leader can do to overcome imposter syndrome. And the last one that I want to mention is around this idea of knowing your stuff. And so one of the reasons, for example, like I have a copy of, I have like this annoying itch in my eye. So my book here, the new book that just came out, The Future Leader. So those of you not familiar with it, I interviewed 140 CEOs and I surveyed 14,000 employees in partnership with LinkedIn. Why did I do that? I could have easily written a book where it was just my opinion, where it was just kind of my thoughts on leadership, like so many leadership books out there are written. But instead, I took this very research-centric approach. Because now when I speak about this, when I share this with people, I know that I have my stuff put together. I know that I have the research. I know that I have the insights. I know that I have the stories, the examples to back up whatever it is that I'm going to say. So if it helps you, and it certainly helps me, if I'm giving a talk to an executive team and they challenge me on something, a lot of people, when you get challenged by other top executives, it's very easy to kind of get into a defensive mode of like, I don't know, let me get back to you on that. But when you know your stuff and when you have this data and this research and support behind you, you can go into any conversation and you feel almost like you have this force field around you. So if I ever get challenged by an executive team, by a CEO, I always have something that I can say. Well, based on the research I put together, this is what the most crucial skills and mindsets are. Or actually, I talked to the CEO of Best Buy and this is what he's doing. So you have that force field, you have that arsenal that you can bring with you wherever you go. So as a leader, if you are making a decision, make sure that you have all of the data in front of you so that when you make the decision, you can say, look, these are the things that I looked at to make that decision. And if it doesn't turn out okay, that's fine, but you made the best decision you could based on the information and the data that you had. It's quite another thing as a leader if you just make a decision based on gut, based on not knowing anything. So really know your stuff. Get the data, get the research, do your homework, and that will really, really help you as a leader feel more confident when you make decisions, when you invest in things, when you talk to people, whatever it is that you're doing. This will give you that extra confidence and the support that you need. So those are the strategies that I think are really, really crucial for leaders to use to try to overcome this kind of imposter syndrome. That's pretty much all I wanted to share with you guys today. We can open it up to questions. I know we have a bunch of people floating around on all sorts of different social channels. So if you have any questions, feel free to post them on any one of these platforms: LinkedIn, Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, wherever you might be from. Or if you have a tip that maybe I didn't cover, something else that you think is important to do to overcome imposter syndrome that I didn't address, I would love to hear from you. What other tip do you have? What else would you do? And I know there's a couple second delay. So while there is that delay, I will once again mention, if you want to get this PDF called the Leadership Digest, which will basically give you a summary of the 9 skills and mindsets that 140 of the world's top CEOs say are essential for leadership today and in the future, then you can go to theleadershipdigest.com. That's theleadershipdigest.com, and you will be able to download that PDF. It will also add you to my newsletter, so that I will send these things out. You'll know when I go live. I'll also do a recap of this and send it out via email as well. So does anybody have any questions, comments, anything that you want to share about anything? Now is the time to do it. Let me see. Okay, we have a couple people posting in. I see we got a couple more people saying hello from the Bay Area, from Nigeria, from Amsterdam. Hello, hello, hello. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to say hi to all of you before. Hello, folks from Instagram. Mike, how's it going? I see you on there. Let me put up this comment because I thought this was a good one as well. So thank you, Andrina, for sharing your comment. Resetting the default reaction, I do think is absolutely crucial. You're right. Anybody else? No questions. It's all right. I won't judge. Oh, I see a couple coming in here. All right. So somebody was asking, hello from Scotland. Somebody was asking, where is the best place to start? If I had to pick one tip, what would be the one tip that I would share to start doing right away? The easiest thing to do, I would say, is learn to say, I don't know. I think from all the things that I talked about, it's actionable, it's practical, it's easy to do. Next time you're in a meeting, next time you're in a group setting and somebody asks you something that you genuinely don't know the answer to, that's it. That's all I want you to do, is just say, you know what, that's a great question. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. Maybe we can talk about it. Or what do you think? I think that would be a wonderful place to start. Thank you, Maria. I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words. I'm not putting all the comments up on the screen here, but thank you, Maria. I really, really appreciate your comment. Glad you find the video useful. Okay, let me see if there are any other questions. It looks like there are. You're welcome, June. Hello, Kilar, watching on YouTube. I know it's hard to keep track of all the different channels out there. Maybe I'll do one or two more questions that pop up. So somebody was asking, how do you even begin? I think this is a question about for your leader. So somebody else was asking a similar question, like, how do you begin to have a conversation around imposter syndrome with your team? Sometimes you don't even need to call it imposter syndrome. I think sometimes people get a little bit scared of the name imposter syndrome. And when they hear that, that immediately makes them think that they are a fraud. So you don't, if you find that your teams are a little bit hesitant to call it out by name, you don't need to immediately say, hey, let's talk about imposter syndrome. You can instead say, hey, how do you deal with low confidence? Or how do you deal with a situation where you are where you are tasked with something and you don't feel like you're confident or ready to be able to do it? What are some of the best ways that we can do to overcome? What are the best things that we can do to overcome that? So if you don't want to actually say imposter syndrome, you don't need to. You can talk about it in terms of confidence, self-esteem, motivation. And there are a couple signs to look out for when it comes to imposter syndrome. Workaholics. Are you a workaholic who constantly feels like you need to be the first one in and the last one to leave? Oftentimes that's a sign of imposter syndrome because you feel like you're trying to kind of compensate for things. Are you not able to appreciate your accomplishments? That's another classic sign of imposter syndrome. So pay attention to the signs, whether it's for yourself or for your leaders, and don't feel like you always need to call it out and say, aha, imposter syndrome. You don't need to do that and try to make people feel bad. You can address it without kind of directly talking about it. We got a couple comments on Instagram as well. Your book is brilliant and halfway through it. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. In your book, it is good to reference showing your vulnerable. Yes, I do talk about that in the book. I talk about embracing vulnerability as well. Very true. Okay, so here's another question. I will put this up here so other people can see this. If your peers or manager tries to take account of your I don't know aspect, then what would be your advice? So it sounds like, and correct me if I'm understanding this correctly, it sounds like if your leader or manager is trying to get you to say, I don't know, or is kind of maybe trying to push that on you, is that what you're trying to get? I mean, I'm assuming that that's the what your question is geared towards. I think it's okay to have a conversation with that manager and with that leader and try to find out, just sit down and say, look, I appreciate you working with me on this. Don't push me if that's okay. And just find out what's going on with the leader. I mean, maybe I'm misinterpreting the question, but I don't think anybody, especially your leader, should be pushing and forcing you to say, I don't know. I think it's the leader's job to be able to know how to have the right conversation with you to get you to embrace vulnerability, to be more comfortable with saying, I don't know. But if the leader isn't doing it themselves, then the leader has no place trying to get you to do it for yourself. Next question we have on here is, can you please help clarify how to start to develop a growth mindset for someone who has predominantly worked with a fixed one? So again, there's a whole book by this on this called Mindset, which was written by Carol Dweck. And I'll just give you kind of a quick background. A fixed mindset means that you believe that you can't grow, you can't develop, you can't learn new things. You're kind of fixed where you are. And a growth mindset means that you can sort of overcome that. You can become better. You can learn, you can grow, you can develop. And I think one of the most important things there, which I mentioned earlier, is to focus more on things that you learn instead of on things that you do. So whenever you do something, I want you to just get in the habit of saying, what is it that I learned from this? From this situation, from this encounter, from this project, from this meeting? What is it that I learned from this? And it gives you that kind of self-talk of learning, which I think is going to be crucial. That would probably be the easiest place that I can start. But again, if you want the full book on this, Google Carol Dweck. It's like a 400-page book or something. And she goes into a lot of detail in there about that. Okay, let me see if there's one more question here. Okay, that was just a comment. My pleasure. Thank you very much. All right. Well, I think that's everything for today. I will be live again next week on Wednesday. I don't know what the topic is going to be yet, but it'll be another leadership topic. So thank you everyone who attended. Thank you everyone who commented and who said hello. I really appreciate it. And I hope you found this session useful and fun and informative. And again, remember to get to theleadershipdigest.com, added to the newsletter, and I will see you all very, very soon. Have a great day.